The AC went down, so it'd be nice and quiet.
It's time. Good evening. The council meeting of July 3rd will come to order. Would ask that all in attendance turn off or silence your devices, and if you'll please stand to honor God and country. Lord God of the nations, by your grace and in your patience, you are allowing our nation to once again celebrate its birth, and we are grateful. We thank you for the blessings of liberty. We thank you for our independence, peace, and for all those who have bravely served this nation in the defense of freedom and justice. Today, we do not presume your grace for our country and community. Our people are in need of you. Our businesses are in need of you. May we look only to you, dependent on you, as we tomorrow celebrate our nation's birthday and as we this evening conduct the business of our community. In your precious name we pray. Amen. We will now pledge to the flag of our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If there are any persons wishing to address council this evening, there are forms available in the back of the room and may be turned into the clerk to your right. Our first presentation this evening will be an update of the 2045 population and employment projections. Sean College, Research and Infrastructure Team Leader from the Hillsborough County Planning Commission, will present. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you. I'm Sean College with the Planning Commission. It's a pleasure to be here. Good evening, Council and Mayor. And I'm going to give you a quick update on our 2045 population and employment projection project. I was here a few months ago and we talked about it then, but we've made some progress. Wanted to tell you about it. So if we could bring the PowerPoint up now. So I'm going to give you a quick background just to bring you back up to speed on what we've been doing. And then I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Mr. Johnny Wong of the MPO, who's going to talk to you about the transportation scenarios that we're testing and the outreach that we're anticipating to kick off very shortly. And then I'll come back up here and I'll tell you a little bit about the land use implications of different growth scenarios, and then we'll talk to you about the next steps in the process. Again, just the background, if you recall from a few months ago, we are expecting a great deal of growth in Hillsborough County. We expect by 2045 to have about 2 million people in Hillsborough County. That's about 700,000 more people than the base year of about 2016, so that's a lot of growth. As I mentioned, a little over 714,000 people, about 454,000 more jobs are expected to come to our county. And as we look at the land available within the urban service boundary of the unincorporated area and within the cities, we find that there's about 52,000 vacant developable and redevelopable acres available for development. And as we look at how that builds out, or how that has built out historically, the different land uses, we find that they're not building out at the full density that they're capable of. And if we continue to build at those densities, we expect to run out of those 52,000 acres or build them out somewhere around 2035. That doesn't get us to the full 20 to 25 year horizon that we'd like to. So we have to think of, what do we do? How do we accommodate the growth for the next 20 to 25 years when we don't have the vacant, developable, and redevelopable land available? So we need to explore other options for growth. We need to understand the implications of different choices, and we need to develop what we're going to call the hybrid plan. We're going to look at different scenarios. We're going to develop a hybrid or consensus plan for this at the end of this process. And I am trying to go backwards, and I'm not. There we go. Okay, so we have, again, local population projections, what I just told you about. We also are doing a market analysis. We engaged a market consultant to talk to us about what the market might do in Hillsborough County with regard to this growth. And this will end up in the hybrid, in the center of this graphic, our hybrid scenario or vision that's going to be informed by the Metropolitan Planning Organization's regional transportation infrastructure scenarios. And ultimately, that hybrid plan and vision plan will inform the MPO's long-range transportation plan, local comprehensive plans, CIPs, master plans of various departments of government and such, and ultimately will also inform the regional long-range transportation plan. So that's what we're planning on doing. And with that, I'll now bring up Mr. Johnny Wong from the MPO, and he can tell you about the transportation scenarios and the outreach program.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Once again, Johnny Wong, Hillsborough MPO, and I am the project manager for the outreach portion of the LRTP update. Our long-range transportation plan is one of our most important plans. It's something that we update once every 5 years to account for changing demographic and land use conditions. It signals our transportation priorities to policymakers in DC and Tallahassee. And this particular LRTP update will contain a strong regional component to show residents of Hillsborough County how transportation projects here connect to a wider regional vision and vice versa. And so because of that strong regional component, we've been working very closely with our counterparts in Pasco and Pinellas counties. Am I doing this right? Okay, sorry. Give me 1 second to get situated. All right, so we are using a scenario planning process, and part of that process involved us recruiting transportation and land use experts from around the region, bringing them together and asking them what they see as significant drivers of change over the next 25 years. So to put it in a present-day context, we asked them what they foresee as the impacts of autonomous vehicle technology, what they see as the impacts of transit investment, highway investment, tolled express lanes, et cetera. And so as a result of bringing that group together, we've identified 3 exaggerated visions of the future. Just to be clear, none of these particular scenarios we see to become the reality in 2045. However, by getting public feedback, we hope to have the public identify the most preferable or desirable elements of each, and we are going to identify those individual, unique elements and combine them together, and that will be the plan, that will be the vision of the future that is forwarded into the final update of the long-range transportation plan. Sorry, that was a mouthful. And so to get that public feedback that we need to develop the hybrid or consensus-based plan, we are going to be attending a number of pop-up community events. We have already scheduled approximately 50 meetings with communities throughout Hillsborough County. I would say approximately a dozen in Temple Terrace. We've been working fairly closely with city staff to identify neighborhood associations and community groups. We are purchasing ads. We recently acquired Bucks and Lightning tickets to use as an incentive to have people complete the survey. And so I've already kind of led into that, but the most critical element for us to gain outreach and feedback is what you see on the bottom right hand of this screen. We're going to be using MetroQuest, which is an online survey tool, to get feedback from the public. What the survey respondent sees on this screen is an introduction. It's an orientation to the LRTP, explaining to them what it is and why it's important. They are then able to click over to the second screen and declare what their values are. So on this page, you see 8 priorities, and we're asking the survey respondents to identify their top 5 and rank them in order from most significant to least. On screen 3, we introduce those 3 exaggerated scenarios. We include a bulleted description on the bottom left, and those priorities that were identified on the previous screen carry over to screen 3 so that they're able to see how each scenario affects the priorities that they care about. Scenario 1 is corresponding with the current trend plus investments in technology. And so under this scenario, we see the key elements being additional highway lanes on some east-west corridors in Pasco, moving to the west, an additional lane on US 19 in Pinellas, moving into our county, Gandy Boulevard, an interchange improvement at Big Bend Road and I-75, lane addition at Citrus Park Drive, Veterans Expressway, and Lithia Pinecrest. This scenario also includes transit in the form of BRT, which runs from South St. Pete north along the I-275 corridor through our county and ending at approximately Wesley Chapel. Scenario 2 corresponds with a Beltway and Boulevard concept. Under this scenario, we see that some of that traffic that currently occupies roads within Tampa's urban core would be redistributed around via a tolled express lane, a loop, if you will. That loop is created by State Road 54 in Pasco, which runs east-west. On the west side in Pinellas, it connects to Eastlake, or it connects to McMullen Booth Road in Eastlake, runs south along that corridor. It's carried back east along 275, which transitions seamlessly into I-4, and on the east side, the north-south traffic is carried by I-75. This scenario also includes a boulevard conversion, so on 275 north of downtown Tampa to approximately Bears, that interstate would be converted into a street-level boulevard with BRT running along it at the street level. This scenario also includes Central Ave BRT in South St. Pete, which connects downtown to the beaches. And the third scenario is transit-oriented development. So under this scenario, what is included is significant investments in bus and rail to incentivize infill and redevelopment in the cities. On the map to the right, what is shown is BRT. That is coded with the green lines with yellow hatchings. The existing CSX train tracks are coded in purple. Orange represents the passenger rail connecting downtown Tampa to the Orlando Metro and possibly branching out to other parts of the state. And at the very south, the water ferry connects the downtowns of St. Pete and Tampa, as well as MacDill Air Force Base to South Hillsborough County. So on screen 3, we introduce the scenarios and we're asking the public to provide just an initial reaction of each. But again, we know that no single scenario will be forwarded to the final LRTP. It will be a composite of each of those elements. And so on screen 4, this is where the public gets an opportunity to tell us how they feel about those individual elements. Say, for example, you feel so-so about the trend plus tech scenario, but you're really a strong proponent of investments in AV technology to help facilitate better traffic flow. Well, on screen 4, you get the opportunity to provide that level of detail. And then on screen 5 is where we're collecting demographic information. The outreach portion of this plan will run from July 27th. That's a little tweak in the date. It was actually July 20th, but we had to push it back due to unforeseen circumstances. So it will run from July 27th through to October 1st. And at the midpoint, we're going to do a check-in to ensure that we're getting diverse responses from around the entire county. We're collecting demographic info to track that, or to ensure that we get responses that are diverse based on employment status, income, race, and geographic distribution around the county. And at that time, if we see that we're lacking responses on any of those areas, we'll have the opportunity to redirect some resources to ensure that we get the amount of responses that we want. And like I said, we're going to unveil this survey July 27th. That weekend, we are going to be at the Back to School Bash, and there is another school event for Hillsborough County. If you haven't seen the advertisements, I'm sure you will. What the council can do for us is to help promote this survey and create a little bit of a buzz. We foresee that this survey will advertise itself, but we could use your help facilitating getting it out to the public, at least at the early stages. I'm going to turn it back over to Sean to describe the land use impacts, and I'll be here to answer questions.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Wong gave you the transportation side of these different 3 scenarios. We have some understanding now of some of the differences of how these scenarios will impact population distribution and some of the indicators that we're looking at of how they perform. So the trend scenario, as mentioned, was mentioned. This scenario from a land use and population distribution standpoint is more somewhat of an expansion scenario. In this scenario, as we run out of land, the urban service boundary of the unincorporated area might be expanded, and some of that growth will go into the rural area that's currently rural will become more of a suburban area. Under the second scenario or second strategy, the Belt and Boulevard scenario, this is a little bit of a mix. We're going to hold the line on the urban service boundary in most places, but around I-4, we might push out some areas there and expand and have more population in what is currently rural to make it suburban. But in this scenario, as we hold the line elsewhere, some of that population pressure might push some population to other counties. So in this scenario, we might not get that full 700,000 because of the constraints. Some of that population might get pushed to other counties. And finally, in the transit-oriented scenario, this scenario is really holding the line on the urban service boundary and allows us to really concentrate on redevelopment and more redevelopment opportunities inside the urban core of the county and in the cities as well. So this is where we try to accommodate the population within the current boundaries that we have, with the exception of annexations and such that might take place by jurisdictions. And finally, this graphic gives you the 3 scenario or growth patterns side by side. and you can see some of the differences. And this is online on our website if you wanted to take a look at it outside of the meeting. Now, for some of the indicators, as I mentioned, here's one of them, the growth within the urban service boundary. Under the trend, the Beltway or the transit-oriented development, you can see the trend has less growth inside the urban service boundary, the current service boundary, because that would be expanded. Acres of new impervious surface. This is an important indicator because impervious surface is a good proxy for surface water quality. The more impervious surface you have, the more runoff you have of fertilizers, of car oils and such, and they impact surface water. So as you concentrate impervious surface, it's generally not good for the environment, not good for surface waters. And under the trend, you would have the most amount of new impervious surfaces. Demand for water and sewer. Under a more expansion scenario, you tend to see more demand in the future for water and sewer. Under the Beltway, it's a little bit even lower than transit-oriented development, but that's because the Beltway is pushing some of that population to other counties. So you're going to see that in the next few graphics as well. Demand for water and sewer. This is in terms of distribution lines. The other one was in gallons. This is distribution lines, but it's a similar scenario. A more expansive pattern of development would require much more distribution lines, which have to ultimately be maintained by jurisdictions and in the county as well. New local streets. Under a more expansive scenario, you have to have more local streets that are accommodated for that pattern of development. And again, while developers tend to build these local streets, they are ultimately, in many cases, turned over to a local government, which has to maintain them, has to fix the potholes, has to repave them on a certain schedule. So that can be costly. New home-based auto trips, we have an idea of the auto trips that may occur under these different scenarios, and under a more expansive scenario, you would have more trips. And finally, I'll just close with the next steps. As was mentioned, on July 27th, Mr. Wong mentioned there will be a kickoff of the input. We want to get everybody's input on these different scenarios, what do they like, what they don't like. Ultimately, we'll be back and we'll be talking with everybody and try to formulate an ultimate hybrid or vision scenario that might take pieces of these different ones and try to figure out what everybody wants and what our future should be. And we'll continue to look at that and to work with your local government staff here on this project. And we hope to have a hybrid scenario or a vision scenario by the end of this year. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Wong, and thank you, Executive Director Beth Alden, for being with us this evening. Thank you. Next, School Support Committee appointments. There are 2 vacancies on the School Support Committee due to the term expiration of Marilyn Smalley and Kingsley Kelly Paratino. Both are eligible to serve another term and are interested in continuing to serve in this role. If the applicants are present, would they like to address council? I see someone standing up.
Good evening. Marilyn Smalley, 7822 River Ridge Drive, Temple Terrace 33637. I have proudly served through the last term, and I would like to continue to serve. I'm a teacher at Temple Terrace Elementary, and I've been involved in Crime Watch and other things in the city over the years, and I would like to continue to be involved.
Thank you, Ms. Smalley. Is Ms. Paratino here this evening?
I don't see her.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the reappointment of Marilyn Smalley and Kingsley Kelly Paratino to the School Support Committee for a term extending from July 3rd, 2018 until July 3rd, 2021.
I move to approve appointment of both applicants.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Motion carries, and thank you for your willingness to serve. Board of Adjustment appointment. There is 1 vacancy on the Board of Adjustment due to the term expiration of Patty Vergana. And Ms. Vergara is eligible to serve another term and is interested in continuing to serve in this role. Is Ms. Vergara here? Don't see her this evening. Council would ask for a motion to approve the reappointment of Patty Vergara to the Board of Adjustment for a term extending from July 3rd, 2018 until July 3rd, 2021.
So moved.
I hear a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the nay sign. Motion carries. Next, Municipal Code Enforcement Board appointment. There is 1 vacancy on the Municipal Code Enforcement Board due to the term expiration of Ryan Westfall. The city received 2 applications for service on the Municipal Code Enforcement Board from Mercedes Leiden and from Ryan Westfall. Are the applicants in attendance, and would they like to address council? Yes, please.
My name is Mercedes Lyden. I live in Raintree Village. I moved down to Temple Terrace in 2012 from Philadelphia. My background is in accounting, in pharmaceuticals, and I'm learning as I go as the president of my association about construction and painting and trees and roofs and things like that.
Very good. Thank you.
That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, each of you have a ballot. Would ask you to vote for your top candidate, and once you have, if you will pass your ballots down to the clerk. Our clerk will tally the ballots. Ryan Westfall has received the highest vote total. I would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Ryan Westfall to the Municipal Code Enforcement Board for a term extending from July 3rd, 2018 until July 3rd, 2021.
Move to approve Ryan Westfall to another term on the Code Enforcement Board.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the nay sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Lyden, for your interest in the board, and thank you, Mr. Westfall, for your continued service. Council, if the minutes of June 19, 2018 City Council meeting are acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of June 19th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the nay sign. Thank you. The minutes stand approved. Persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda, a 3-minute time limit will be imposed on all comments from the public. Individual members of the public who are present in the audience may designate in writing a representative to speak on their behalf, not extended beyond a 10-minute period. As speakers come to the podium, if you will please state your name and your city of residence. During public comment on items that are not on the agenda, the city manager and our city directors who are in attendance do make note of these items. During the city manager's report later in the agenda, Mr. Stevenson may make comment on items that are brought up, or where further research is necessary, he or staff he assigns will reach back to our residents. We do want to ensure our residents that all of your comments are taken seriously and will be followed up on. Is there anyone who would like to address council on items not on the agenda? Okay, moving on. Next is the Municipal Code Enforcement Board. Lien reduction petition, 6709 Jennifer Drive. Code Compliance Director Tom Baroni will present the case. Mr. Baroni.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, Tom Baroni, Code Compliance Director. The Municipal Code Enforcement Board lien reduction petition in case number 17-1607, City versus Judy Flynn, property located at 6709 Jennifer Drive, with a lien amount of $8,200. The lien reduction was presented to the Municipal Code Enforcement Board at the June 13, 2018 hearing. Testimony from city staff was presented, as well as testimony by Mrs. Judy Flynn and her daughter Jennifer. Based on Mrs. Flynn living in Temple Terrace for more than 30 years, having financial hardship, medical issues during the time of the violation, and also suffering from depression, city staff's recommendation to the Municipal Code Enforcement Board at the June 13th hearing was to reduce the lien to $700 to cover the city cost. The Code Board's recommendation to City Council after a 5-2 vote is to reduce the lien from $8,200 to $1, contingent upon the fine being paid within 30 days of council's decision, or it will revert back to the original amount. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them, and the chairman from the Code Board is here as well. Thank you very much.
Mr. Baroni. I would ask, is the property owner in attendance, and would they like to address council?
She's here, but I don't know if she wants to speak. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. I think we covered everything. My daughter,
Please approach the podium.
it was my
Mayor, they can't hear it.
Here in the back, apparently.
It was my oldest daughter, Jennifer, who spoke the most, and then I added a little bit. And I was very grateful for her being here. You know, I think it's harder to blow your own horn than to have someone else kind of, you know, someone close to you who knows what they're talking about, you know, give the picture of things about you. So I was really glad she could be there. But that was the only Tuesday she was available. I think she has a class, teaches a class in addition to her full-time work at USF. And so she's not here tonight. But I just want to express my gratitude for the time the board spent and how attentive they were about the issues involved. I was very heartened at their recommendation, very heartened. And I appreciate your time about it too, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn.
Are there any members of the public that would like to address council on this item? Seeing none, if council determines the lien reduction is appropriate, would entertain a motion to approve a lien reduction in case number 17-1607, City versus Judy Flynn, for the property located at 6709 Jennifer Drive. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the Code and Board's recommendation to reduce the lien in case number 17-1607 to $1.
Thank you.
Contingent upon payment within 30 days where it reverts back to the original amount.
Thank you, Councilman Ross. Is there a second?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the nay sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Consent agenda. City Manager Stevenson will explain the items listed on the consent agenda. Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City Council, we've got 3 items on consent agenda this evening. The first agenda item is 5A, which is a resolution approving a new local agreement with Hillsborough County concerning the distribution of boat registration fee revenues in return for the city to continue their marine law enforcement coverage on the Hillsborough River. Hillsborough County imposes an annual registration fee on all marine vessels. And since 1993, the city has operated under an interlocal agreement with the county for its shared distribution of these funds. Specified in the agreement, the city's $60,000 funding allocation is used towards salary and benefits of 1 full-time police officer assigned to our marine law enforcement duties. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt the resolution approving the proposed interlocal agreement with Hillsborough County concerning the distribution of the boat fee revenue in return for our continued assignment of a marine law enforcement officer during the fiscal year 2019. Item 5B is a resolution to purchase a fire command vehicle under our replacement plan with the fire department. $40,000 was included in the fiscal year of 2017-18 under Community Tax Investment Fund for the purchase of such a vehicle. Lighting package, the vehicle has a lighting package and radio installation as well. The total cost for the vehicle, lighting, and the radio installation, excuse me, is $37,393.41. This purchase is being made from Alan J. Chevrolet in Sebring, Florida, under the Sheriff's Association contract FSA 17-VEL 25.0 at a cost of $32,860. The purchase of the lighting package is being made from Signal Technology Enterprise, DBA Public Safety USA, under a piggyback agreement currently from the City of Miami at a cost of $4,033.41. The current radio system will be moved from the older vehicle to the new vehicle at a cost not to exceed $500. All these expenses were allocated in account 160-1511-522.64-11. And staff recommends that City Council adopt a resolution approving the purchase of this 2018 Chevy vehicle. Item 5C Earlier this year, the fire department submitted an emergency medical matching grant to the state of Florida for EMS equipment. Fire department received notification this month that our agency was fortunate enough to receive that grant from the Florida Department of Health. The following equipment includes 5 modems for EKG transmission, along with the 3-year contract from Verizon to provide data service. This equipment and service is currently being provided by other jurisdictions within the county and throughout the state. Certainly something new for us. The equipment allows our agency to transmit cardiac events via our monitors in our EMS vehicles to the receiving hospital. That technology has shown to improve patient outcome significantly and then increase survival rates by the receiving hospital getting that information before they get to the emergency room. It's recommended the City Council approve this resolution accepting the grant funds from the State of Florida Department of Health in the amount of $9,160. Acceptance of this grant, which is a 75-25 matching grant, requires the city to fund 25% or $2,290 of the total amount of the grant. These monies are allocated for those expenditures in current funding out of account 001-1521-522.52-5-35. With that, Madam Mayor, I suggest that council approve all 3 of these consent agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Stevenson. Are there members of the public that would like to address council on any of the items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, if the consent agenda is acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve items on the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the nay sign. Thank you. Consent agenda stands approved. Next, a resolution terminating the amended CDBG interlocal funding agreement for 17-18. Finance Director Lynn Boswell will explain.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. This resolution is to terminate the original agreement that held parts of this money specifically to Temple Park. Since there is alternative funding, we can now go ahead and use the entire piece of the $124,000 from the CDBG for infrastructure in our city.
Thank you. Are there members of the public wishing to address council on this item? Seeing none, I would ask council member, are there any questions?
No.
If acceptable, would entertain a motion to terminate the amended CDBG interlocal funding agreement between Hillsborough County and the City of Temple Terrace.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, item 6B, a resolution authorizing the execution of the second modification to FY 2016-2017 CDBG funding agreement. Finance Director Lynn Boswell will explain.
Madam Mayor, Council, this current resolution will allow us to extend the time frame for us to be able to complete the project. We do intend to have this project completed before December 31st of 2018. Currently, the CDBG runs out in March of 2018, and this is just to extend it, and this is their document that they've presented to us to allow us to use the remainder of that money.
Very good. If acceptable, would entertain a motion authorizing the execution of the second modified agreement between Hillsborough County and the City of Temple Terrace to fund initiatives under the CDBG. This modification will extend funding that has been awarded to December 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, a second public hearing and second reading to adopt ordinance 1456 for CPA number 18-02 beyond self-storage. The public hearing is now open. Planner Mary Ann Abrahamson will give a brief review.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. This first item is CPA 1802, the comprehensive plan amendment, the second public hearing and reading for 7308 East Fowler Avenue. The owner is First United Church of Tampa. The applicant is North Point Development. This property was annexed into the city on June 5th, 2018. The request is for a future land use change of residential 6 from the county to commercial in the city. The Planning Commission found this request consistent with the comprehensive plan, and staff recommends council approve ordinance 1456 for CPA 1802.
Thank you, and we do have one individual wishing to speak on this, J.J. Jenkins.
Good evening, J.J. Jenkins, the applicant, and I'm here for questions if you had any, but other than that, I think gave the presentation last time with all the information. I'm also here for the next item on the rezoning and can provide an update on that at that time as well, so.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
The public hearing is now closed. Council member, questions?
I did have a question for the applicant. Sorry, I tried to get you before you got
sorry.
away.
Yep,
Did
sorry.
you work with the neighbor that came before us last time about what was the resolution of that? Were we able to resolve that to her satisfaction?
So, yeah, after the meeting last 2 weeks ago when we were here, I actually went back to their property with them and kind of walked through and made sure we all understood their concerns and what we were proposing. You may remember they had moved in recently. It was after we had several of the neighborhood meetings, so they didn't have the benefit of that. We went through and ensured them that there would be no gap in the fence. That was one of the issues. Provided an updated rendering that shows that that was no gap, that the new fence that we'll be installing will be right on the property line and will connect in with the existing fence there that's on their west property line. So I think that that's all good. We also went through their concerns. They had some concerns with just site views from their backyard. Most of them had to do with site view to the west, which actually wasn't to our property. But what I agreed to do was plant up to 3 8-foot tall plantings when we put, we would add that to our landscape plan at that corner. And so that would cover up the abutment of that fence at that corner and then try to help with that view, even though it's not towards our property, but to the west, it would probably help with that as well. And I had proposed that to him, sent that to him in some follow-up email this week. I know that they're traveling at the moment. We had some back and forth, and I think that they wanted to maybe change the type of the planting and that kind of thing, and we're certainly happy to do that, but remain committed to planting 8-foot plantings, 3 or 4 of them to help shield that, whether it's at the corner or further down, we can do that. And also working with them, there's some discussion if we would provide some stepping on our 8-foot fence as it got closer to that corner, and we're happy to do that as well if that's what they would prefer. We could either make it 8 foot all the way through and work with the shielding with the landscaping, or we can also work with it so that it kind of steps down towards that corner, and then there is no gap or no abutment differentiation between the heights at the corner. So either of those outcomes are fine with us, and we're happy to work with them with that.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. Do you build other things besides storage units?
We do. Our company, we do a lot of large industrial distribution warehouses. We also do multifamily apartments, and we do senior living facilities.
Okay, so you see, that's our city manager. I'd like you to call him tomorrow and find out what other properties we have.
Very good.
You
Thank
sound like you're a great person to work with.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. If the city clerk would please read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, amending the Imagine 2040 Temple Terrace Comprehensive Plan, future land use map for one parcel of land located on the northeast corner of East Fowler Avenue and River Hills Drive with an addressable location of 7308 East Fowler Avenue, consisting of approximately 4.25 plus minus acres, by changing the future land use designation of said property from residential 6, Hillsborough County, to commercial Temple Terrace, for CPA 18-02, providing for amendment to the official future land use map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Council would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1456, CPA number 18-02.
I move to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, a second public hearing and second reading to adopt ordinance 1457 for RZP 18-02 beyond self-storage. The public hearing is now open. Planner Mary Ann Abrahamson will give a review.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor and members of council. Before my presentation tonight, I'm going to hand you a copy of a revised Exhibit C. The applicant has requested that we make some, one minor change to the conditions of approval. Number one, approved uses. And I will get into that and detail that in my presentation, but here is the hard copy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, this item is RZP 1802, the zoning reclassification for 7308 East Fowler Avenue, the second public hearing and reading. Again, the owner is First United Church of Tampa. The applicant is North Point Development. The zoning request for this is to change the zoning category from CN, Commercial Neighborhood and Residential 6 from the county, to PD, Planned Development in the city with a a conceptual plan with 6 conditions of approval. The change that I had mentioned earlier is just regarding the approved uses, condition number 1, the building footprint. I have broken it down now between the building and then the drive-through portion of the building, which is to the south. I want to be clear that the actual building footprint has not changed since the first public hearing and reading. This is just adding a little bit more detail into what goes into that building footprint. So the actual total building footprint has not changed, or the design, the outlay of the building has not changed since the first public hearing and reading. I also added the total square foot to account for all 3 stories. So again, the first condition of approval is the approved uses table you see in front of you. Number 2 is site development standards. Number 3 is the residential landscape buffer that we also spoke about prior, the 20-foot landscape buffer along the north and east property lines. The 4th condition of approval is the 8-foot privacy fence, or the wall along the north property line for the length of the first 3 neighbor lot lines, I should say. The 5th condition of approval is coordination for infrastructure improvements, just a standard condition of approval for new developments. And the 6th condition of approval is the hours of operation per our land development code. A noise ordinance states that any unloading or loading facility shall not operate in between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. in the morning. Planning Commission has found this consistent with the comprehensive plan, and staff recommends that council approve ordinance 1457 to adopt RZP 1802 with the conditions of approval.
Mr. Jenkins, would you like to speak on this item?
Again, I won't take up time duplicating information, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that came up. And as Mary Ann pointed out, we didn't change anything there. That I'm just trying to clarify that make sure that there was no misunderstanding about the square footages and that kind of thing. So that's all that was intended to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. And prior to taking questions from council, I'd ask if there are any other members of the public that would like to address council on this item. Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Council, are there any questions? Councilman Ross.
I noticed in condition of approval number 4, it says the developer shall install and maintain an 8-foot privacy fence along the north property line. He talked about a wall. Is it necessary to distinguish the difference between a wall or a fence, or is that covered in other documents somewhere?
Well, it could be, that would be further addressed in the site plan stage, really. The 4th condition of approval calls for a masonry wall or a fence, so either one of those they would be provided, or excuse me, they would be required to provide. And they have mentioned the privacy wall, so that's just typically we refer to it as a wall or a fence. But further detail into what is physically constructed would go into the site plan stage when the site plan is approved and reviewed.
Are there any other questions, council members? If the city clerk would please read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, rezoning 4.25 acres of property located in the northeast corner of East Follow Avenue and River Hills Drive with an address of 7308 East Follow Avenue from zoning classification residential RCS 6 and commercial neighborhood CN, Hillsborough County, to planned development PD in Temple Terrace for RZP 18-02, providing for amendment of the official zoning map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Council would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 1457, RZP number 18-02. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Motion carries. Next, a first reading of an ordinance to vacate a certain right-of-way replat of Temple Terrace downtown. The public hearing is now open. The city manager will explain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In July of 2017, City Council approved the replat of the Temple Terrace downtown property, so the property could be marketed for sale in a different fashion than what we had been doing in the past. In January of 18, City Council approved the execution of a purchase and sale agreement with Paragon Development. While Paragon Development was in their inspection period, the developer had discovered that the title had a flaw in it because of the survey of the property that we had intended to sell him. I provided you with an attachment that shows a strip of land that basically is 14 foot wide by 260 feet long. I am not able to explain why that jog was put in the original plat. I've gone out there at the site physically and tried to identify if there was some kind of encroachment that we needed to be concerned with. I am unable to do that. I can't explain why that strip of land was cut out of the plat. I have no explanation for it whatsoever. In order to proceed, we are, I believe, close enough that if we abandon this piece of property that is described on the plat as right-of-way, I think Paragon is prepared to proceed with getting this thing to closing. Obviously, he wants to get that strip incorporated into his project, which he had intended to do all along. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I believe that this is a slight modification to the extent of the property. We have no reason to look to hold on to this piece of strip of land. So we've put this ordinance together. We've actually got to go through 2 readings in order to vacate this property. My suggestion is that we move forward with this so that we can get with Paragon and get this 3.5 acres to closing. I think that's about the only thing that we're waiting on.
Thank you, City Manager. Are there any members of the public wishing to address council on this item? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. City Clerk, if you would please read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, vacating, closing, discontinuing, and abandoning a certain right-of-way in the southeast quadrant of the intersection of Bullard Parkway, Bush Boulevard, and North 56th Street, City of Temple Terrace, Florida, the same being more fully described in Section 2 hereof, providing for conditions of vacation, providing for recordation, providing a severability clause, providing for repeal of all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date.
If acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading. If approved, the ordinance will appear for a second reading and public hearing on July 17, 2018.
Move to approve the ordinance as described.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay sign. Motion carries. Next, first reading of an ordinance, proposed city charter revision. The public hearing is now open. City Attorney Shoshone will explain.
Yes, thank you. At the last meeting of council, it was discussed the referendum questions that are to go on to the ballot. I had asked some questions of council, seeking some guidance in what we should include and what we might not include. You set forth your preference that we have only 3 referendum questions. I think we've been able to put just about everything that the committee had recommended be changed into these 3. I went ahead with your approval last time, or your recommendation last time, that we use a 3rd referendum question that would allow the correction of minor typographical errors, grammatical changes, illegalities going forward, rather than to change them piecemeal each time. And that way, it would take care of a lot of the changes that the committee had recommended. And the ordinance is set forth to approve this particular drafting of the referendum questions, and to then also allow the clerk to proceed with what needs to be done through the Hillsborough County Supervisor of Elections to make sure that they get on the ballot in a timely manner.
Thank you. Are there members of the public wishing to address council on this item? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. If the city clerk would please read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, calling for a referendum ballot election to be held on November 6, 2018, for the purpose of various amendments to the Charter of the City of Temple Terrace, providing direction to the city clerk to coordinate that the referendum election as required by Florida law, providing that the charter shall be amended to incorporate any proposed amendment receiving a majority vote of the electors of the city in favor of such amendment, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date for the ordinance and the proposed charter amendments.
If acceptable, would entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading. If approved, the ordinance will appear for a second reading and public hearing on July 17, 2018.
I have comments. Do you want them now or the motion?
We cannot discuss until after there is a motion and a second. Is there a motion?
I'll motion for, I'll make the motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
Okay,
Councilman
thank
Donahue.
Mrs. Schoen and I have burned the email trail back and forth the last week. I have a request to make a change to, and I'll pass out my suggestion, on Charter Amendment Number 2, and I'll wait just a second while. And believe it or not, there's a change even from what I'm handing you, so. One of my concerns all along has been that you can educate the public, but until you actually get to the ballot, you better have everything that you're thinking about doing on that ballot, so that they will be able to read the ballot and understand fully. So in looking at the title, it says establishing date when officials take office, clarifying term limits, clarifying procedure to fill interim vacancies. So the piece that I respectfully asked you to consider is, you see at the top portion, the way Ms. Schoen has put it before you, but the second one would be my suggestion. And believe me, to keep it to 75 words is, took many, many hours to try and figure out how to do that. So if I might be allowed just to read the change, it would be: newly elected council members or mayor will be sworn in and take office on the second regularly scheduled council meeting after certification of election results. Mayor and council members, upon serving 2 consecutive terms, will not be permitted to hold their same office again for 2 years. And this is where I'm interjecting. Campaigning for a different elected position is allowed without interruption. Interim vacancies will be filled by council during a noticed council meeting using written, in brackets, not secret, ballots. That's basically under the 75-word rule, which was what I was going for.
So you added
So-
some additional language.
I'm sorry, okay, so if you will look at my paragraph, scratch the word properly, after the word written, put in brackets, not secret, close brackets, ballots. So it leaves the intention, as was pointed out to me by Mrs. Schoen, because we used to actually have the word by secret ballot, we need to identify and make it sure we're transparent about that we're no longer going to use secret ballots. But my issue all along has been that if I want the voter to know exactly where we're going with this, and because of the way we are changing the voting privilege of the mayor, you could actually go from being mayor to being a council member without interruption. That's the way this was written. The Charter Review Committee wanted it that way, and we have accepted that. But I want to make sure that the voter knows that that is the case, so that they'll, I'm just going for transparency. I'm not changing their intention. I know you have 2 members here. I'm not changing their intention. I just want to make it clear that, that is, last time we had a charter change, we inadvertently, the way it was worded, later on, we found out that we hadn't said enough. And so we didn't make it clear, and therefore we had a problem with a candidate who couldn't run for office. So in thinking with that, my goal was to clarify every single, it's not a loophole, it's a fact. So I would ask that, I did run this past Mrs. Schoen. I don't want to speak for her. She seemed to agree that this would work. The words that were changed or removed did not change the intent of the question. It is still a question. I would ask your consideration of this modification to the question that she will be sending to the supervisor for elections.
There is a motion and a second on the table. We have had some input from Councilwoman Donahue. I would ask, is there any further discussion on the motion and the second as it stands? I see Councilman Schaller, and then I'll go to Councilman Boss. Thank you.
I just wanted, we have one of the committee members, Mr. Schuster here. I'd like to just get his, feedback based on what's being presented to us, because they haven't been back, and they certainly played a role in this. So I'd like to have the voice of the folks that we appointed to, and get his feedback on.
Give this to him so he can see what it looks like.
Gil Schisler, 66609 Peachtree. This is the first time hearing this insertion, so going back to the original deliberations, the charter says that they shall not seek office for 2 years. We clarified it to say that they shall not hold office for 2 years. And we modified it to accommodate the different things. And the general feeling was that by modifying from seeking to holding, you could campaign. So there's no need to enter the words campaign and confuse people. I think, I have to read this quicker than just standing up here, but I think that the way we modified it took care of that problem without inserting campaigning terminology into the referendum or the resolution.
May I answer?
So that's, if that's the only change, again, I have to sit down and compare it to what was there. But if that's the only change that you're trying to insert, modifying it from seeking to holding, that eliminates that whole issue. Because you can't hold office until you've been elected.
You're
You can
right.
seek it,
Correct.
okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Boss.
Well, again, we're gonna come down to kind of technical stuff here, but we want to add in, you get 73 words here already. You want to add in not
Secret.
not secret.
75.
And then I think we have to pose it as a question, which would have to add shall newly elected council members. You probably have to add that in because we're asking a question of people. Not just saying newly elected council members, you have to ask them the question, shall they be allowed to do this? So we come into a little wordsmithing issue. That's just a technical thing. I'd just like to hear more why campaigning for a different elected position is allowed without interruption should matter, but that's all, just clarification on that.
Madam Mayor, I think Mr. Schuster misunderstood. I was just asking him, based on the proposed ordinance, the way it was presented, if your position, at least representing the committee to some degree, were they okay with what was presented in 1, 2, and 3?
Yes, they were.
Okay, right. Yeah, I didn't mean for you to get into the amendment. I just want to make sure we're doing something that's sort of in line with what you guys thought was, okay. Thank you.
Councilman Donahue.
Okay. Thank you. You're absolutely right. The sentence that says, mayor and council members, upon serving 2 consecutive terms, will not be permitted to hold their same office again for 2 years. That is fully in the intention of what you wanted to change, because that was an error that had really messed up another campaign in recent terms. What I want to make sure is that we know that because you can go from being the mayor with a vote to a councilman with a vote without because you're switching office. So you're switching office. This says you may not be permitted to hold their same office again, but nowhere does it say, and that's why I added this line, that you could switch offices. So you could go from being mayor to being councilman, or councilman to mayor, without any separation. And I asked that at the last meeting, and that was explained, that everybody said that's fine, voters can make that decision, and I'm not trying to stop that process. What I want to make sure is that it is clear that, and maybe campaigning or holding, whatever word you feel it would be better, if campaigning is not the right word, I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure that the voter understands at the ballot box, not at a town hall meeting or at something he's read, that it's clear that you may hold a different elected position without interruption.
Thank you, Councilman Donahue. Are there any other comments? Councilman Ross.
Yes, I'll be brief. I just want to clarify my position. I've said it before, it hasn't changed, and I just want to go on record. I was in favor, still am in favor of giving the mayor a vote. I think it's a good idea for a number of reasons. It was a platform in my campaign. I'm in favor of doing it for several reasons. I think we're goofing up here. I did not plan on, and I said this before, and I was outvoted, which is fine, but I just want to clarify again, I'm not in favor of what we're doing here that allows a voting mayor to term out, run for a council seat, term out, run for mayor, term out. This person can stay as a voting member of this council indefinitely, which I think defeats the whole purpose of the term limits that we have in our current charter. Now, I'm going to vote in favor of this as the motion as it is, because I think the people of Temple Terrace will decide the issue. So I'm voting in favor of putting the question to the people, but for my part, I am in favor of giving a vote to the mayor, but I am not in favor. I don't know where this language somehow worked its way in that allows somebody to stay forever, and I think that's a terrible mistake.
Thank you, Councilman Ross. Is there any other discussion? We have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor, please signify
Well,
with.
before I vote,
Oh.
what am I voting on? Am I voting?
You're voting on the original motion that
Original-
was made.
Okay.
There have been no amendments or changes, so the
thank you.
original motion that was made, which is what Attorney Shoshone presented to us. So there is a motion and there is a second. All in favor,
I have
please.
a question.
You have already spoken twice on this issue. There is a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you. Seeing no carryover council business, we'll move to new business. Is
I
there
have
new?
council business.
But is this new business? Is this?
It's old business. It's 14-year-old business.
Okay.
It's business
It's new only
Is it
because
carryover items from our previous meeting?
it's carryover items from this meeting.
Okay.
Okay, and you can tell me I should wait once you hear me, but I want to at least bring it up. Now that we've approved this, I don't know what you want to call it, correction, replatting, or whatever, when are we going to have a development agreement?
That's a really good question.
Thank you. How about you give me an equally good answer?
I don't know that I have a specific answer until, until the point where I can talk with Paragon and tell them that we're moving forward with this.
But when do you
Things
think,
can kinda be
when do you
in
think your
timing.
piece is going to be done?
I do think that we could probably get this thing closed, wrapped up, what do you think, 30 days?
I spoke to Paragon's attorney today to let them know that the issue with regard to the right-of-way was in front of you today. I did remind them that we had already sent them a proposed development agreement with regard to the timeline for doing this. They were going to take a look at that again, and hopefully it won't come back with any changes on it.
I mean, if we've been delayed and adjusted and for way too long, I think. And I don't, can we get a date certain? Can it be the second meeting in August, do you think, or?
Councilman, I would have to have a conversation with Jared Moon before I make that commitment to you. I mean, I can't do that without some kind of negotiation with him.
Okay, 'cause we're already
I
past
do
the
think this
timeline,
is,
right?
this is the last thing that we've been waiting for and working towards. I have no indication that he's not willing to move forward here quickly. So if I could maybe check into that and kind of get back with you, I'd be more than happy to.
Right. But
But
please
I need to
understand,
have some conversation with him.
please understand, it's me talking, but I think I'm talking for most of the city, that this has gone on way longer than it should have.
I don't disagree with that. This is an unexpected problem that we found and discovered. We've been trying to work this for the last month. I can assure you that you don't want to get the closing table any quicker than me.
Okay. Please get back to me, thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I
Thank you.
address that same issue?
I was
I'd
going
like
to
to
say,
discuss the same issue unless somebody else is in front of me on the same issue.
Councilman Shalera.
I'm just extremely disappointed. I brought this up 2 weeks ago at the meeting. I said, where are we at the development agreement? And I expected an answer tonight. What I don't want is that, they're two separate issues. The plating and development agreement are two separate issues. Okay? Development agreement says what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do it. The plating is how the property's gonna be deeded and the way it's laid out. They're two separate issues, and I'm not getting the answer that I'm looking for. We have $24 million at stake here. The clock keeps ticking. The developer's getting all this free time. And at least what we should have done is put something in writing, Mr. Developer, we need a deadline on the development agreement. The deadline for them to put up the hard money is passed because of the deficiency in the plating, okay? I get that. But there's no reason why the development agreement should not have been dealt with. What I don't want is this plating issue gets taken care of, and as they said, well, we're looking at the development agreement, we'll get back to you. Well, what do you want to get back to me on? Let's talk about it now. This should be done. There is no outstanding issue that I'm aware of on the development agreement. If there is, tell us about it now. Don't keep dragging our feet. And I don't know how the contract speaks to the development agreement language, but I'm sure there's got to be normally the contract, if it's a good contract, I would isolate problems. If there's a title defect, the seller normally has so many days to correct this title defect. Okay, how much time is there to put together the development agreement? The contract's got to speak to that. If it doesn't, shame on us for having a lousy contract. But we have to have, they're two separate issues. This is why we keep losing money on this redevelopment, and it takes forever to get it done. There's no reason why this development agreement should not be executed or agreed upon by both parties in writing And the plating, I get it, okay, it was done wrong, let's move on, let's fix it. But development agreement, that doesn't sit well with me. I brought this up 2 weeks ago. Ms. Begolrich brought it up this evening. We're where we were 2 weeks ago. Nobody knows nothing. Developer says, well, yeah, we saw, we're gonna look at it again. What does that mean? Is there a sticking problem? Is there an issue? I would like to know how the sales contract speaks to the development agreement and the developer's obligation to get this taken care of within their due diligence. They have a due diligence, and we have our time. So we need to know that. I feel like we're running in circles. I'm not able to put my finger on this thing, and it's not my job to be the legal department to go handle this, but it's not acceptable. Something needs to happen, and the development agreement needs to be pinned down,
There was a deadline for the development agreement.
okay?
During the course of their inspection period, they discovered, because of this platted right-of-way, they discovered that they weren't getting what they thought they were buying. It cut out like 0.25 of an acre. So because they felt like they're not getting their benefit of the bargain, and there was some back and forth about what do you want in the development agreement, and we felt that they should be able to present one, we don't have to tell you what we want. There was some little confusion with that. But again, they felt they weren't getting the benefit of their bargain, and so they weren't going to give us a development agreement until we fixed this. Now, the original contract has expired. They have presented us with a reinstatement of the original contract with deadlines in it and also deadline for the development agreement. We are doing our part under the reinstatement, and as soon as we finish this part, they're going to present their development agreement. So we're moving along. That's what happened.
Okay, you lost me. They're going to present their development agreement? I thought we've been working.
We sort of, the city manager decided to not wait for them and drafted one for them. We have given that to them. I haven't heard anything negative about it, but again, they are sitting there now waiting for this to be corrected so that they are getting the benefit of their bargain under now a reinstatement of the original contract.
What they're doing is they're taking advantage of us.
Probably,
Well,
but
not probably, definitely. And that should be unacceptable. We should put them on notice that this development agreement must be executed by a certain period of time, and then the plating is a separate issue. Now, I'm okay with them saying, we're in agreement with the development agreement as presented or as amended, and it's contingent upon the property being platted. I'm good with that. But right now, we're just in limbo, and they're buying time on our dime. They're just still shopping for folks to secure the spaces down there, and we're, in the meantime, we're paying interest on all that money. Because right now, that money should have gone hard, and the property would be theirs, and it's time for game on. But since the plating is here, I get it, but there's too many open-ended issues. That development agreement's pretty intense. That was one of our big problems with Velas, the development agreement. And that's the key, that's the backbone of this whole thing. The plating part's easy. You guys fixed that based on what we did tonight, and that's simple. We know the plating is the plating. We give them the 2 acres, 2.5 acres, that's done. What else is in the development agreement that we do not agree upon? Because if they want to engage and play ball, let's play ball. If they don't, we need to know now. I don't want to know 3 months from now, and then we're back at where we started from. We need to get a grip of this thing, our arms around it, and know you've sent them a proposed development agreement, where's theirs? And put a contingency, excluding until this is contingent upon the plating being acceptable. But how's everything else? Because there's a million other things to talk about in that development agreement. That's the whole backbone of this whole thing. So I'm just cautioning you guys, they're playing with us, and I hate to say it like that because I really want to be a good partner, but there's no reason why the development agreement should not be done with the contingency of the plating being taken care of. That's a really big concern to me, that we can't, pin this thing down. So all we gotta do is plat it, and then we go close. But once we plat it, Okay, now let's talk about development agreement. That's the problem I see right now. They're gonna buy another 2 or 3, because remember when we did the contract, I kept making noise. Where's the contract? Where's the contract? And you told, well, their attorney, my attorney, their attorney. What'd that take? 3, 4 months, right? Well, that's how they, how these folks do it out there. And I give them a lot of credit. It's smart on their part. It doesn't cost them anything. It's costing us something. But we need to be smart on the taxpayers' part and say, okay, let's pin this thing down. Aside from the plating, hash this development agreement out. So once it's platted, we can close and move forward. Thank you. I'd like to get something back. I'd like something in writing to be sent to the developer, basically addressing this specific issue. And if they have a development agreement, please share it so you guys can start going back and forth and see what's gonna work. I don't know, I mean, you guys have been working that, so it's your job. So work the development agreement out. Hopefully we can live with it, but let's get that ball rolling. That's all I'm trying to do is, pin this thing down a little bit. So if we can maybe get some feedback at the next meeting, I would suggest put something in writing, because the paper trail is very good, although we're really out of contract right now. So as you're saying, the new contract needs to be put in place, and maybe in conjunction with some language that is gonna speak to the development agreement. But you gotta see this development agreement. If you send them one, they still gotta send you theirs. We're still way out in left field somewhere. So that's my suggestion based on what, I'm observing here. I'd like to get a little bit further down and lock this thing up a little bit. Thank you.
We'll provide that to you next meeting.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilman Shalura. Councilman Ross?
I don't know if this is new business or council business.
Are you changing subjects?
I am.
Okay, real quick, I just want to clarify something. Pam, I thought I heard you, and if I've heard wrong, please correct me. I thought I heard you said that they've given, or you guys have signed a reinstatement agreement, and in that reinstatement agreement, that has a new date for the development agreement. Was I wrong about that?
The date is a date, it is a new date because the date for the development agreement has passed.
What does that date represent?
It's a period of time after we have fixed the right-of-way issue.
Okay, so, I'll
It
pick a
might have been
number.
like 30 days.
Okay, so 30 days after this, or after tonight, I guess, right?
No, because we have,
I gotta go to a second reading. Okay, so 30 weeks after 2 weeks from now, they're supposed to, that's the latest you can get a development agreement, according to the restatement agreement.
We haven't signed the reinstatement
Oh,
agreement yet.
okay.
So we can shorten that time and.
Okay.
And that's what, based on what Councilman Shalura has said, I'm gonna go back and look to see what they put in there, and since there is really no reason for them to delay further, once we fix this,
Yeah.
I'd like to shorten that period of time.
Because technically, we're out of contract. So they're entitled to even to their deposit back because there's a deficiency in title.
Right, but they're not trying to do that.
I get it, but what I'm trying to say is, we're out there bare right now. I want something to latch on. I need skin in the game, I need commitment. And right now, I'm not too comfortable with what we have. And I don't want to go that direction, because I really do want us to have a very good relationship with this developer. But there really is no reason why this development agreement should not be further down the road.
I feel that if it hadn't turned out that this error was discovered, we would be pretty close to done now. This was the problem, that they came up with during their due diligence period, and then they had to create a legal description for this area so that we could vacate it. As I mentioned last time, the right-of-way is fictitious, really, since we own the property, it extinguishes the right-of-way. But to satisfy the title company at closing, there had to be a document vacating what used to be a right-of-way.
And I understand that, but the development agreement and the plating are two separate documents.
To them, it's not.
Well,
To them, it wasn't, and that was the problem.
they know what they're doing. They're very good, I'm sure, at what they're doing. But development agreement talks about the development of the way it's supposed to go, and the plating is the way the property's platted. It's two separate issues. I understand they both need to be landing at the same time, or the development agreement could be before. But what I don't want is you to fix this plating thing, and then we spend 2 or 3 months working out the development agreement while we're sitting on our hands saying, we're just waiting for the plating to take place right now. I'm not saying we, I'm saying on their side, and they're just buying time. That's all.
Councilman Ross.
Yes, ma'am. I apologize if this is new business or out of time. I just want to let the council know that the River Watch Task Force that I'm the liaison to has applied for a grant. It's a Florida Department of Transportation funded grant, but it's administered through Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. Grant requested is in the amount of $2,800 to be used to purchase swag, things to be given away at community events and that type of thing, to draw attention towards litter abatement, river issues and stuff. Just wanted to let you know that. It hasn't been awarded yet, but I think the chances are good.
Thank you. Are there any other additional new items to come before council? I had one item on the minutes that we received from the council retreat session. Several minutes of discussion were missing, and there's some that council had given directives to both the city manager and made request of your mayor that we're taking action on. So would really request that our city clerk go back and document.
There was no tape. It was only 20 minutes on the tape, so either the plug came out of the wall or.
And then I would request that you go to the facilitator follow-up discussion that was there, because again, those were actionable items that we are moving on. So I know as your facilitator, I gave a comprehensive summary of what happened at the retreat, and I just think it's very important. I don't want any of our 3 economic development partners to think that it is the city manager or your mayor acting independently without directives
add
from
that
this
in.
council to take action. I feel very uncomfortable with that. That was something that was determined and requested by council members, and it was a very strong and forceful discussion, so I really want that shown. I mean, we have new positions coming as a result of that discussion, and I think for, as Councilman Donahue said earlier, for transparency, our citizens need to know how we're coming up with some of the decisions and directions we're taking, so that's very critical. City Manager's report, Mr. Stevenson.
Madam Mayor, I got just a couple of things here. We have received the settlement agreement for Debbie Hamby. Just to let you know that we're prepared to sign that document and get this thing done and going. That has been, in fact, negotiated with the other 2 set of attorneys, and we're ready to execute that document, just to let you know that it is in our office to do that. I gave you notice about morphogenesis. It's unfortunate. But that QTI, we'll have to bring you a resolution here in the future once we get some documents exchanged with EDC and this company about their non-presence in the city limits of Temple Terrace. We'll take care of that. That's kind of just a cleanup deal. It's unfortunate that we lost that company. I have yet to be able to. I didn't want to question EDC on a conference call that we had on Friday. But I'm real curious why they didn't move into Temple Terrace, and I'll provide you with some of that information. And again, that's the kind of information that we need to know. If it was a problem with site plan, or a problem with development, or if it was a problem with parking issues, whatever, that's information that I need to figure out so that we can fix that in the future. So I will try to get to the bottom of that and let you know. We discussed coming up with some special meetings in order to move forward with our budget process. I will look at the calendar and get with you guys and try to come up with some dates that are suitable for everybody. And we'll take a look at maybe even if we have to extend some of these meetings or a review of a final draft before we give you a final draft into August. We have some time to do that. So. If we're looking for more meetings, I don't mind at all. The more the better. If I can, I'll ask Mr. Langfeld to come up. I'd like for him to give you just a brief update on what we're doing with the Family Rec Center. This is kind of his little projects that he's kind of taken as his little own special little deal here. But we've got that in Riverwalk boardwalk, so.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. It is a pleasure and an honor to be up here again tonight to talk about some of the wonderful things we have going on in leisure services. Construction is going on in earnest in the family complex now. I don't think all of my fillings are still in my teeth after all the jackhammering that's been going on in the building today as they are starting to demo in preparation for rebuilding what is going to be a wonderful complex when it is done. So construction fencing is up, dust walls are in place. There's still dust everywhere, though. There's a lot of noise, a lot of racket, but at the end, 10 months from now, we're going to have a fabulous new family recreation complex. Yes, sir.
Has your contractor given you any kind of hard charge schedule or anything that you could share?
Yes, sir, I have that.
Can you share that with the council?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. The second project that is going on is the renovation of the River Hills Park Boardwalk. This past Friday, we held a pre-construction meeting on site with the contractor doing that work. A notice to proceed was issued later that day. I'm expecting construction to start on that on Monday, July the 9th. So that project will be wrapping up shortly after the school year has started. The principal at River Hills Elementary has been made aware of that project. We have signage going up to notify everybody of what's going on out there. So we've got exciting things going on throughout Parks and Recreation right now. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Somebody asked me a question today, and I didn't have the answer. Somebody had asked a question today, and I didn't have the answer. Well, they need to listen better than I don't know. The graving, the names on all the old boards.
Yes, sir.
Are the new boards gonna have that graving in there, or is that just, it is
Well,
what it is? I don't know, I didn't have the answer for it. so I
Right,
couldn't-
the engraving on the boards has been from the beginning and continues to be a women's club project. I have been in contact with representatives from the women's club throughout this process. The original plan was when boards are sold to somebody who wishes to buy one, they're for the life of the board. There are boards out there that have names on them that have probably been there since 1985. Those boards are not savable and not reusable. The original plan was to take the existing boards that were newly sold within the last 12 months ago, and transfer them to the new boardwalk. With the new boardwalk now going in with the recycled material instead of with the pressure-treated wood, that's not really feasible. We're continuing to work with the Women's Club to come up with a suitable alternative to that. Prior to actual construction, we're having kind of a remove the plank party, where we're gonna take all the planks that have names on them, remove them, contact the owners of those, and say, hey, if you want your plank that's been on this boardwalk for all these years, you can come pick it up and we'll have it for you. So,
Perfect, now I know how to respond, so, thank you.
you're welcome.
Are you gonna buy a board?
No, I can respond to he wanted to know what to do or where to go, so now I could tell.
If someone who wants to buy a board today, can they still do that?
Yes, sir, they would need to contact the Women's Club.
And how do you actually engrave fake wood?
It is
Same way.
doable. We contacted the company that does the engraving of the boards currently and said, hey, if we go to this pressure treated, can we engrave these just like we do? Yes, it would be routed just like it would be with the natural. Now, the Women's Club's talking about maybe doing something different, instead of actually engraving names on boards, do plaques, or maybe something a little bit different that hasn't been,
So if they want to engrave it, they can.
they can be engraved, yes.
Good to know.
Does that conclude your report?
Just one other thing to close things up here. We have our 4th of July activities tomorrow, the big parade. Those people that are watching on TV, please attend. It's a great event. We have a great time. Parade starts at 10 a.m. Fireworks start at 8:30, 8:45. What is it?
What?
9:15. I'll be in bed by then.
It'll still be raining at 8:45. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, if we have a storm like we did last night, that was some storm. But anyway, I welcome everybody to come out. It's a great event that the city puts on, and I know that our crew, being a lot of different departments, puts a lot of work and a lot of effort into this, and I'm certainly appreciative of what they do, so. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. If there's no further business
Just
to come.
one quick PSA. According to Channel 13's weatherman Paul Delgado, the coolest city in the East Coast is our own Tampa Bay. The coolest city,
What
not the
city is
hottest
that?
city.
What city is that?
Coolest is in we're
Ten-
groovy, or?
No, as in the temperature, the
Don't
coolest
say that.
temperature in the East Coast, we are cooler than Maine, Michigan, DC, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and all those other cities. We have the coolest temperature right now.
Oh, okay.
So none of us can whine on the parade walk
Yes.
tomorrow. If there's no further business to come before council, the meeting will stand adjourned. Happy Fourth of July. We look forward to seeing the community out at the parade tomorrow.
He talked all about that engraving.